This is A Silent War Within, the podcast dedicated to confronting the unseen mental health battles carried by our first responder and healthcare heroes. This show is about real stories, real struggles, and real ways to survive the storm and come out stronger on the other side. For too long, stigma has kept you silent. But this is your space to bravely break that silence, share vital insights, and build a community where your well-being truly comes first. Because your service deserves unwavering support.
All right, as usual, welcome to A Silent War Within, everybody. We're happy to be with you again. We are having a great time doing this. This is one of my favorite days of the week that we get to come in and podcast and interview folks. It's been a lot of fun doing this. We've had great responses from it. Our stream numbers continually climb every week that I check them, and that's exciting to me. So we're really happy that you're here. Of course, you can always find us at asilentwarwithin.com, as well as all the social media pages, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. But today we've got something extremely special in multiple ways. So because Kim has kind of been absent, she's working on her bachelor's degree and other things in her life, and she's moved and she's just got a lot of things going on. We've introduced a new guest host that I want to permanently introduce you to. You might recognize her from last week's show. This is Michaela Davidson. She's going to be helping us out today and for episodes to come. When Kim can't be here, or even sometimes when Kim is, we can have a 3-person interview team and it'll be a lot of fun. So Michaela, happy to have you here with us today.
So excited.
I know. I'm excited too. But let's get right into the meat, if you will, of what we're here to talk about. So for years, I've followed EMS Leadership Academy, taken some of their courses, watched their podcast that they've been on, listened to some of their talks, listened to some of the people that they've put on stage and given the opportunity to speak about leadership. We were just talking a minute ago, and they described themselves as leadership nerds. This is Lisa and Robbie. You guys are the co-founders of EMS Leadership Academy. So tell us a little bit about yourselves, your background, where you're from, what's going on in your life, and what EMS leadership is to you.
Well, Kevin, thank you. We appreciate it. Michaela, it's great to meet you. And I mean, how we got involved in this, I think it was well over 15 years ago. Lisa and I had an opportunity to meet. And at a time, it was a point in my life where I was struggling to keep up as a leader. I felt like I was just barely, keeping my head above the water, and an organization and an industry that even back then was using the phrase recruitment and retention crisis. And here we are 15 years later, and everybody's still using the word recruitment and retention crisis, magnified by a global pandemic that some organizations and a lot of people didn't survive. So when I first met Lisa, we hit it off. Like, there's just those moments in your life when you meet someone and like, we're going to be friends for life. And we did a turnaround in my organization. And we went from struggling and people slipping through the cracks, and we called it the revolving door of the organization. People were leaving as quickly as we could get them in. And we're like, I figured there's got to be a better way. And why is it that, the state gives us a curriculum to teach an EMT course or a paramedic course, but they don't give us any leadership course. They don't give us any resources. Like, I felt like I had to look outside my own industry. And when we met, Lisa and I hit it off. We did some small interventions that really had big results. They say, little hinges swing big doors. And the culture of the whole organization, the feel of it, people just started to be attracted to it. It became what I called a magnetic organization. We had people skipping from 2 counties away. Like, they would travel from 2 counties away to be part of that organization. And then people were like, calling me like, hey, what's in the water over there? Like, what are you guys doing? And, we knew we had to be on to something. And, fast forward a little bit of time, and we started to formalize the process that we had done there and kind of take it on the road. And so we had a road show, and we started publishing articles together, a book together. And, I went down this leadership rabbit hole of, why did that work? Why, there's got to be more science and research behind it, and just got really, crazy and looking for opportunities to learn more about why this worked. Fast forward all this time, we published a book. It sold copies throughout the world, from Moose Jaw, Canada to Ireland, the UK, Australia. The message was resonating. And in a relatively short amount of time, about 6 years of us hosting the EMS Leadership Summit and meeting some of the most incredible leaders you can imagine. We grew our following. It took us, I think, over 5 years to grow our email list to 900 people. And in 5 or 6 years, we have reached close to 20,000 leaders from 44 countries.
Wow.
So, that's the short of the long story. But I'll let Lisa go ahead and talk a little bit about her background.
Well, first of all, just thanks for having us. This is a thrill for us to be able to talk about what we love so much. Just sort of the shortest version I can say is when Robbie and I met, I had already been working within organizations, both nonprofit and for-profit organizations of all different sizes, on the very same issues that Robbie was facing. They just weren't in EMS. When I was fortunate enough to meet Robbie and hear what he was dealing with, I was like, I know that I can help you. I really do know that the processes, the things that I've discovered about communication and performance will really help your organization. And so when he says we took some small interventions, these were things that I had been doing in other organizations with great success. We tested them out, and sure enough, because they're people too, they were excited about it and started inviting other people to be a part of it. And when Robbie started getting those calls about how did you do it, he was giving my phone number out, and I was going out and trying to do it. But what was missing was Robbie's perspective. Although I, was trained as an EMT back in college, which was a few years ago, let's just leave it there. I had never been in, ridden an ambulance or anything of that nature. I got a little bit of a cachet because I was a child abuse investigator for about 9 years. So that bought me a little bit. But long story short, I went back to Robbie and I said, I think we're onto something, and I think we could work together. And that was, I think, what really helped us build this, is that bringing both of our perspectives, now over 30 years of experience, and Robbie's incredible experience both in his leadership studies but also in his on the ground experience and his leadership experience. So we could again go on and on. I know that's not all about us, but just to give people a background is we've trained so many people. We've learned so much from the people we've trained, that where we are now and where we were 15 years ago, I mean, it's just evolved incredibly since then.
So I think one of the things that I learned just recently, really, and I say recently, within the last year, is for 3 years prior to now, I was a very low-level leader. And one of the things that I don't think anybody really, you hear leadership is hard. And from multiple people, I did. And from a low-level leadership position, I didn't understand that, because I was like, well, this seems pretty easy to me. This is mundane task. I'm just kind of the task guy. But when you get into a position of higher leadership, I've found that leadership becomes a very emotionally taxing. And for me, that looks like my decisions now have weight. My decisions now have power, and my decisions affect people's lives. And I feel like that's a very heavy burden to carry. Why do you think this is so emotionally taxing? Why do you think that leadership can be emotionally taxing? And how do you, I guess, implement ways to kind of keep that emotional presence separate from the professional life? Or is there a way?
I mean, I'll jump in first and say that leadership is as hard as we make it. And we usually make it through language, and we put words to it. It's heavy. It's hard. You mentioned that you were a low-level leader, and these are all things we do as humans. We just add additional meaning to situations, and it almost makes it harder on ourselves. We're not making it any harder. We're not making it any easier. Right. And frankly, I believe people can be a leader at any level in an organization. So if you're on the front lines, you're a leader to your crew, your partner, your community, the patients that you're dealing with. And that's no less than somebody that's got a position of leadership and has the influence to make a difference at a broader level. And the second thing I'll say is there has been research done for many years by Richard Boyatzis and Annie McKee in the world of emotional intelligence and the world of resonant leadership. They published this book, Resonant Leader. It's a fantastic read. And every profession, they've seen people in mid-career professionals carry this burden, this weight of leadership. And if they don't have outlets to have systems and structures of renewal that help balance the scales for themselves, they term it the sacrifice syndrome, where these midlife professionals, they're feeling like the world is so heavy and they've got so much responsibility. And if they don't counterbalance it with practices in their life, whatever those practices are that you believe in, whether it's mindfulness, whether it's working out, fitness, health, just outlets that help you just refill your own cup. They see, in every industry, people burning out and sacrificing. And if they don't recognize that, if you don't recognize that and you don't do something intentional about it to balance it out, you're just going to continue this downward spiral. And it's proven in the literature. It's proven in what I've experienced as a person that was put into a leadership role at a really young age, and then again later in life. And so those are my thoughts on it. I'm sure Lisa's got a great take.
Well, what comes to mind is that, for years we've been doing a leadership training, and we ask people to we do this metaphor exercise where we say, fill in the blank, and we have people work in teams, and the blank is being an EMS leader is like being a blank. And they come up with a list. And then we say, draw us a picture, right? Like create a metaphor that's an expression of that. And the pictures that we get are horrifying, frankly, in some ways, and not because of the talent of the artist, but things like babysitter, cat herder. So we have a picture that we kept of I'm on a tightrope, juggling knives with knives all over the bottom, people like shooting at them, just all these things. And this is universal. This is not like, in this area or this area. We have people from all over the world that come to our trainings. We've done it locally for places. So for me, what that demonstrates is not how EMS leadership actually is. It's how it occurs to us, how it feels. That's how we inherited. That's the culture of leadership that gets inherited within EMS. And then when we step back and talk about, how that is impacting your life when you believe that EMS being a leader is like this, you're braced for work before you get there, right? You're creating all these strategies about how to survive the day or survive the shift based on this inherited conversation. And so through the process of the work we do, we then ask people, how would you like it to be? And we get these gorgeous pictures of people like, people on a boat all rowing in the same direction, or a circus ringleader where everything, the tents aren't on fire like they were in the other one, or the orchestra, right? And although this may seem like an exercise, it's actually transformational for people because they start to see that there's a choice, that all of this added what it's like occurs, as Robbie said, in language. It doesn't occur. I'm not denying that it's hard. What I'm saying is that there are ways of thinking about it that we have innocently, that we've inherited, that just make it so much harder than it has to be. And that by starting to see the choice of buying into that story or creating systems and strategies consistent with the way you want it to be, it's like a breath of fresh air. Now, do people still need self-care? Absolutely. Do people still need that balance that Robbie was talking about? Certainly, because we all love what we do so much that we're in danger of diving in and forgetting we have lives, right? But again, the thing that I like to point to is stress and suffering occur in language. In reality, there's stuff happening. And then our brains are constantly interpreting that. And if we're interpreting that through the veil of someone else's story about what leadership is like, it brings it all down. So to answer your question, why is it so hard? Is because we don't know that we've walked in with a veil already on. We're like trying to dig our way out of a hole that we didn't create and doesn't even really exist. So our goal has always been to help people see beyond these paradigms of what it's like. Again, not denial, not like positive thinking, which not my thing, not something I encourage people to do. But actually, if we deal with the facts separate from our narrative, we have so much more freedom to create. But when we don't see the narrative separate from the facts, then what we're dealing with is an unsolvable problem.
So you guys are obviously educators now, but you're also still leaders in the industry. You're leaders in what we'll term the Leadership Nerd Revolution. You guys are kind of leaders in that space. But in that journey,
you heard it here first, folks.
Right. The Leadership Nerd Revolution. That's what we're going with. Because I too have always said and will continue to say that I'm not necessarily a leader. I'm a student of leadership that is still learning and want to continue that. One of my favorite authors is Simon Sinek, which is just, that's my guy. There's another one, Jefferson Fisher, who is a communication savant that I listen to all the time. And he just comes with these great inputs on things. But in your journey to leadership and educator, were there any personal battles that you had to face in those holes that you talked about that maybe are almost imaginary, that you guys had to figure out how to jump over in your leadership journey?
Do you want to go first, Robbie?
I would just say, huge fan of Simon Sinek. And even the quote, when I first heard him say, and we stick this quote on a lot of things. It's leadership is not about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in your charge. And I will tell you, whenever we used to share that on social media, even going back probably 10 years ago when he first said it, like that message resonated with people. And if people if that has that viral sensation of a message, when you hit on one of those points with people and they just share the heck out of it, we've shared a lot of messaging over the years. Like, it's a message that resonates with people. And the other thing that we teach in our course too is, it's not all about the tactics and the strategies. You don't have to get it perfect. Nobody's perfect. We don't think we're the be all end all of leadership. Like, we're constantly learning and seeking out new knowledge and trying to use curiosity to get to the root cause and to help people create new, better, bolder visions of the future that just compel them into the future. So, that's what we love to teach. We're not trying to be formulaic about it. We're trying to get people to be more authentic and do what works for them. We're not going to tell you what a perfect leader is, but we will surely help you in a process work through how to create a statement and a leadership vision for yourself and your organization, if you want to take it to that level, that will draw people forward rather than being mired in all the circumstances of the past. And people, like Lisa said, they love stories. They love to add meaning to things. And boy, do they hold on to those stories and that meaning. And in the good old days, people will talk about the good old days, it probably wasn't that great for everyone. And they are just so attached to things being the way that they were. And we love seeing people not only dive into some of this and just embrace it, but also we have seen leaders at the lowest of lows, like people that have shared with us that they were ready to throw the towel in. And there's somebody in a leadership role that spent their whole career trying to get to that point, and they were so stressed and pressured because, they thought they were doing the right things and they're still not getting results. They care so deeply about people, and yet they can't make that big of a difference. And to watch over 2 days going through a training with somebody to see the life come back to somebody's face, the energy, the hope. And then fast forward a year later, they're sending more people through a training that we put on, and those people are getting excited about the future. Again, it's not about us. We realize that it's about helping them see the best about themselves, that there's actually a lot working about you. There's actually so much that works about you. But what do we do as humans? We think about all the things that didn't go well, all the things we got to improve on, the reason why things aren't better than they are. We focus on the weaknesses because, if you have a paramedic, of course, they've got to be good at intubating, yet that's probably only 1% of their job. We're talking about the 98% of the job that we're dealing with humans in a human system, and that they could use a little compassion, some empathy. But we're just so focused and pickled in this juice that we got to focus on our weaknesses, and we just something's wrong with us innately. So it's been a challenge, and frankly, it's been super rewarding to see leaders go through transformation rather than just trying to give them more education, give them more tips and strategies. Because I love Lisa saying this quote, if information were enough, we'd all be rich and thin, because you can just Google it. And it's not all about the information. It's about having people get a new perspective, helping reveal what we call our blind spots, those things that you don't even know you didn't know. And when people kind of take the blinders off, or they can hold up that mirror and see, wow, I could take some responsibility for the outcome. I don't have to blame other people. That gets people excited. And otherwise, they're just in this whole blame and shame game.
That's great. That's great. Just one thing I would say, I totally echo everything Robbie said. And one of the biggest transformations for me, I would say two over the last 7 years. One was that life is happening differently than we've been led to believe. And that is that life is happening through us, not to us, right? We're led to believe that we have to get all the circumstances right. If we can get all our ducks in a row, then we're going to be doing, all's going to be well. Except, A, you never get all your ducks in a row. And B, have you ever gotten exactly what you wanted? 5 minutes later, you're like, is that it? Is that all there is? Right? So there's got to be something else going on. And so Robbie and I teach what's called the inside out paradigm, which is when you actually start to see that your state of mind at any given moment is actually what's causing the experience that you're having in life. It's never the circumstances. It's 100% of the time the state of mind that you're in and what you're believing to be true. And I could talk about that for days, and we do in our 3-day training. So that was huge for me, because then I stopped blaming my circumstances or anything that's ever happened to me for my results. And I could actually start to deal with what were the facts and what could I do about them. It is I'm telling you, one of the most empowering experiences to have. And then the second thing happened 5 years ago after my husband had a massive brain bleed, and I had, he's fine now, by the way, perfectly fine. But in the moment in the ER when they were telling me what was going on, I had this, for lack of a better word, epiphany experience that I can't explain other than to say that I saw without a shadow of a doubt that we have no control over this life and we cannot control what happens. And that is another freeing thing to see, because when you're a leader and you see you're not in charge of the outcome, you never can be. You can do everything right and it doesn't turn out, and you can fly by the seat of your pants sometimes and it turns out perfectly, and everything in between. There's a lot less pressure to get it right all the time. As Robbie said, it's not about being perfect. We go into our trainings with, what are we going to create? What are we going to discover? Have a whole lot of curiosity and have it be the best we can in that moment, rather than here's a cookie cutter approach to, every situation. Because when you let go of the outcome, you can have the intention without trying to control it. And I would say those are two things that not only have freed my life up, but significantly impacted my ability to lead, to produce results with my clients, with the people we serve in EMS Leadership Academy.
So, Robbie, you said you want to help leaders develop a bench of leaders who meet the needs of your people. And Lisa, you talk about giving people a new level of power. But to do that, a leader must be mentally healthy themselves, right? What happens when a team leader is silently struggling with their own mental health? And how does that kind of have the ripple effect for everyone under their charge?
Well, I will first say that certainly I am no clinician or expert in the world of mental health, but we have sure talked to a lot of great people who are. And it's fascinating to talk to those experts, from Megan McLaren up in Canada doing research for first responders. I mean, we're talking like peer-reviewed research studying 80,000 first responders, talking about the world of resiliency and how that her message and ethos is so in alignment with what we believe in. So we've had an opportunity to talk to a lot of folks about the topic. And in my organization, where I serve as the assistant chief of in my EMS organization, we've received grant funding from the state to help, what I like to say is remove excuses. Like, we can make investments into more non-traditional programs to help destigmatize this, the world of saying that it's okay to not be okay and to reach out for help, because so many people do suffer in silence unnecessarily when they have so many people in their life that really do care about them and they might not even realize it. And as leaders, how do we make sure people know that we care about the people? Because let's face it, in an organization, they are our biggest asset, right? It doesn't matter if you have the best equipment, the best vehicles, but if there's no people involved, that we do not exist. If there's no people, then why do we not prioritize the people in the system? I think it was Scott Moore that once said on a talk that you have budgets and budget line items for vehicle maintenance. You have stretcher maintenance. You've got monitor and cardiac monitor maintenance programs. Hospitals have, equipment building maintenance lines, but where's the people maintenance? And if you think it's the payroll and the benefits, no, those are table stakes if you want to have employees. Like, what are we doing to invest in people and support people so that they do feel like they can show up safely in an environment, that they have the psychological safety, as Dr. David Daniels, who speaks with us often, talks about. There's physical safety. Everybody's used to hearing about physical safety, but how about the psychological safety in an organization? I think there's a lot of opportunities there, and hopefully organizations start to see the value of their people as much as they see the value in the budgets that they pitch to their elected officials and their leaders every year.
One of the things that comes to mind for me is, there's that old adage about, if you're on a plane, they say, put your oxygen mask on first and then help others. And so when you have someone who's struggling with their thinking and maybe they're in a low state of mind. And again, I'm not a clinician, but I have worked with a lot of leaders who have shared with me that they have anxiety or they struggle with low moods. And one of the things that often is helpful for people is to see that, it's not, there's nothing wrong with them. There isn't anything wrong with you if you have, anxious thinking, or it means that there's thoughts that are looking true. And that happens to all of us. And, we can imagine, the worst case scenario at the drop of a hat. So my point being that it's hard to quantify the ripple effect. Like if you're not consistently putting that oxygen mask on yourself, but being willing to slow down and really take care of yourself, I think is crucial. And then I think it takes a lot of courage to ask for support from the people on your team. Like you don't have to do it all yourself, right? Like that's one of the other things that we hear so often from the leaders that we train and talk to is they feel like they're required to do everything themselves. And people are just so eager to help. People are eager to give their best and to contribute. And a lot of times we as leaders get in the way. So, if there was a period of time my mom was really sick and, she was in the hospital, Robbie took the lead, and when Robbie was, going to school and dealing with other things in his job, I took the lead. Like we just had that agreement that we're not always going to both be in the best state of mind at the same time. And it's no, it's not, why would we expect that? We're humans, right? So I guess my point is of course there's a ripple effect and there are people around to support you if you can make that request.
Lisa, do you mind if I ask you a quick question?
Not at all.
When you're training leaders and they have their own mental struggles, say they deal with anxiety or they're dealing with depression, is that something that's easy to spot out and you can very quickly identify when you're doing leadership training?
Not usually. People are so good at hiding. I mean, it's people, myself included. I used to have panic attacks when I was much younger, and I could be having one right in front of you, you wouldn't know it. I got really good at hiding it. And so it isn't. And everybody thinks they're the only one. I know I did. I thought, oh, I'm the only one. I'm crazy. I got to have like a facade up. Nope, don't look behind the curtain. All is well. Meanwhile, on the inside, I was a hot mess, right?
That's why I love the name of this podcast, A Silent War Within. It really is. It's silent.
Yeah, a lot of times it is, or people misunderstand. I was just talking to somebody the other day who came to me. I have my own business as well, doing coaching. And the other day, this woman was convinced that, she was the one with the problem. And I was like, I have literally had all those thoughts that you're talking about. And she was like, you have? And I was like, uh-huh. And I've been doing this work for 30 years. I still have those thoughts. I just don't give them any credence because I know they're like the clouds on a windy day. They're going to come, they're going to go. Sometimes the whole sky looks like it's covered in clouds, or it is covered in clouds. But you know what? The sun and sky are still back there. Well-being is still back there, and sometimes the clouds look so thick that you think, oh my God, the sun must be gone. But in reality, it's still there. So, when you start to see that you're not alone, you're not the only one, and often the worry about our thinking is what gets us in the rabbit hole. We worry about worrying, or we worry about the thinking that we have, or we worry about, somebody else knowing that we had those thoughts. And it's like, yeah, worrying never is helpful. There's not one moment in time that worrying is a good strategy. I'm just saying.
I love that.
I wish that I would have heard that about 10 years ago. It's something that I had to learn through my spirituality more so than, because that's kind of a biblical principle as well. So that's something I had to kind of adopt through my spirituality more so than anything else. And that is my outlet, is my spirituality. But one of the things you said that really resonated with me is that we become so well versed in hiding, what we're really thinking or what we're feeling with our emotions. I think everybody, and one of the things that I harp on a pretty good bit, especially on this show, is everybody's fighting some battle somewhere within inside their lives that we can't see. It's an invisible battle. Just to be cliche, it's a silent war within. But everybody's fighting that battle. And I often tell my daughter when she is having a dispute with somebody, she's a teenage girl, so she has the teenage girl disputes with her friends and things like that. One of the things I oftentimes remind her of is people are fighting those battles. And I think that's one of the things that I've learned in leadership. Transparency is a really good tool to use with your people, not necessarily bringing them completely into your life, but just letting them know that, it's not a good day. It's not something that, I'm dealing with things. And I've been very blessed to be on a team that comes alongside me in those times and lifts me up. But every leader doesn't have that. Are there ways that we can use transparency to our advantage versus, and a lot of leaders, and if you use, I always forget the number, the Rules of Power, the book that floats around out there for major executives, it is, reading through some of that, it's just it doesn't make any sense to me. There's a lot of things like keep people in the dark, never let people take credit for things. Like if you read that, those rules of leadership that corporate executives read, it's one of those things that I'm like, none of this works. What are they doing? But is there a way that we can use transparency to our advantage from a leadership perspective? Obviously, this is off script. This is just for my benefit. Sure. More so than anybody else's. And that's kind of what we do on the show is a lot of times we'll kind of go off a little bit and find out some things for our benefit as well.
Well, Kevin, that's funny that you say that because I haven't heard that, but I'm not surprised that it's out there. I feel like some corporate leaders and executives are reading this playbook or on some Substack thread that is like the worst advice of what to do in an organization over and over again. And it just boggles my mind when I watch mergers and acquisitions and their outcomes and how horrible they can turn out when people are kept in the dark, because in the absence of information, they're going to make stuff up and it's not going to be the best stuff. It's probably going to be the worst case scenario catastrophized in our head about it. So I think leaders, one of our main jobs is to try to communicate and then communicate in a way where people feel heard, they feel like they have a voice and that they feel taken care of. I mean, again, it's an organization is nothing without its people. You did drop a line there that I love is, it's actually the number one agreement we have in a document called our operating principles. It's a document that we put together as like a top 10 things of what I as a leader or in an organization I'm going to commit to. And we give it away as a template. And we call it, our operating principles, and that I agree to. The number one is be kind to each other, for everyone is fighting a hard battle. That's the number one thing. And there's other things. Stop complaining unless this is someone who has the authority to resolve the complaint. Respect differences as valid ways of seeing the world. Be mindful of my impact on others. Praise publicly and correct privately. Like it goes on to about 12 different statements. And we have people, we suggest, and it worked for me, is that we have the leaders all sign off on these principles. Actually, the one I have to read here is do not gossip under any circumstances. Gossiping is when you speak about another person when they are not present and it diminishes the person in some way. So we could go through all those, but we have people, the leaders sign off on that document. I've seen organizations, and I've done it in an organization where we've posted it on the wall and say, here's what we're committed to, so that every person that comes through that door knows where we've set the bar. And then we invite other people in the organization, say, hey, we've signed on to it. We've all signed here. When you come in, or if you're part of this organization, I request that you sign this too. Like, here's our commitment. We can make a request. And those become agreements in an organization rather than unspoken expectations. And that's how I think you begin to change the culture of an organization where, again, people are more rowing in the right direction. They feel like they're a part of something great because nobody wants to be part of something mediocre.
Dang, Robbie, you must be a preacher because you
Man,
stepping
yeah.
on some toes.
Yeah.
Not a preacher, but thank you. I'll take that as a compliment.
It is a compliment
yeah.
From a Southern woman, that's a compliment.
Okay.
from two people from the South. That is a compliment. That was fantastic and very usable. Lisa, you got something to add? You look like you were.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I can listen to Robbie all day, every day. He's so brilliant, just awesome. When talk about student leadership, he's just, I get inspired and moved by who he is in the world, and that I'm so fortunate to have him as my business partner. I'm telling you, I think so many things I want to say. So I'm going to just try to bullet point it. But the one thing, I think we forget two things as leaders. One is hardly ever are we the first leader this person has dealt with. Hardly ever, right? People have been led their whole lives, whether it's by their parents, their coach, their, teachers, like principal, whatever. So everybody has a story about people in charge and what it means to be a leader. So, and everybody has different experiences. Everybody's filtered it through their own, what's right and wrong. So when you have someone on your team, there's a whole bunch of assuming going on their part, and there's a whole bunch of assuming going on your part. If you don't have transparency, we're surprised people ever get anything done. Because you could ask somebody to do X, Y, Z, but if in their mind they don't know, and they don't feel like they're free to ask, or they're going to get in trouble, they're going to look stupid, or whatever the interpretation is, they're going to go try to do X, Y, Z, and then they do A, B, C, and now the leader goes, look at that defiant son of a gun, right? Rather than what we teach is, how did I communicate that that's the result I produced? Huge difference, because now I'm owning that's my result. Because the fundamental in my experience, this is my story about leadership. First of all, it's a verb, not a noun. Second of all, we have two main jobs. One is to develop the people around us, and two is to produce results through other people. That's it. That's our job. Develop the people around us to be the best they can be, and the people we lead, and two is to produce results through others. If I communicate to someone to do X, Y, Z, and they do A, B, C, I got to look over here. Who was I being? How did I communicate it? Where was the disconnect? Because if I take 100% responsibility and I bring that to the person and say, hey, this is what I asked. This is what was your understanding? Help me understand however I do that. Now I'm creating a trust and a bond with this person that they see, oh, I can come to this person for help. It's safe here, right? This person has my best interest. They want me to do well. Totally different thing. Now, in terms of being transparent about what's going on with you or whatever, obviously everybody has to do what they're comfortable with. But when I can recognize what you said, that everybody's, going through a hard battle, however you say that, like everybody has a life that's outside of here. I don't care if you've worked with somebody for 15 years or 5 minutes, you see a snapshot of that person. You have no idea who they really are. And I had this experience very early when I started my consulting business many, many years ago. I worked in a law firm. It was a small law firm. And the owner of the law firm, the main attorney, and one of the other attorneys, they had worked together for like 10 years. And we did this exercise where we did interviews about high point experiences. And long story short, they were paired together. And they learned things about it. They had been working together for 9 years in a very small law firm. They saw each other every day. They didn't know anything about these high points, either one of them. And it just opened my eyes to something and opened their eyes to something. And I think it's really helpful to know that even though I know Robbie, as long as I've known him, I don't know him. There's a lot more about him that I don't know. And I've been with my husband over 30 years, and still there's things that come up that I'm like, I didn't know that. So when we let go of the assumption that we already know what this person is doing or what, all the assumptions, it's so helpful. And it goes to what I think you were saying, Michaela, about freeing people up, because nobody has to be in some, square peg, round hole situation. They get to be themselves.
I think giving that grace and that space to allow somebody to be themselves is really important. One of the things that I think is even more important for me as a leader, and again, this is for me as well. So you guys that might listen to this is talking to these guys is just as beneficial for me as it is for y'all. I mean, I'm taking all this in like a sponge. Are there any core skills that go beyond the management part of it and really take us from manager to leader? Because I think those are two distinguished and different roles. Are there any of those core skills that you guys teach on how to be a leader that maybe help alleviate some of that emotional burden that we talked about and create more of a cultural wellness, or even a culture that we're not used to seeing? Like, I can tell you for my employment in general, in January, we got a whole new leadership team, and the culture has significantly shifted because of us, allowing them to come into our space, spending time with them, listening to their concerns, actively listening to their concerns. So are there any of those core values that we can do to build a better culture than what we're used to?
I don't know if I would call them core values. Maybe I'm not understanding. I don't know exactly what you mean by that. I don't see leadership as a, like sort of list of characteristics and like that. That to me is a misunderstanding thing. And I think Robbie agrees with this part. I don't think you manage people. I think you lead people and you manage tasks and projects. That's my take on it. I'm not saying that's true. I'm just saying that's the way, that's kind of how I split it up. I would say that number one is a willingness to be curious and learn and just be, just have a learner's mindset. And we teach that. You go in not knowing, you're going to come out a whole lot better off than going in like and trying to get that across. Like curiosity. For me, I see leadership as this opportunity to respond to what's needed in the moment and provide something, right? Whatever that is. If I have to go command and control, or I have to be, charismatic, or I have to be, engaging. Like I have to have these rules of who I need to be. Oh my God, I'm going to be exhausted. But if I can actually come to a situation with just a state of mind of like, what's going on? How can I help? What's needed here? Maybe what's needed is my area of expertise, or maybe what's needed is somebody to listen to. I don't know, whatever it is, but not have a one tool that I always have to use, because to a hammer, everything's a nail. So I think that's, wouldn't you say, Robbie, the number one thing we really teach people is that curiosity and willingness to not know and admit when you're wrong, or you didn't know it was a blind spot or whatever. But
it takes such a level of vulnerability that people aren't comfortable with. And when I listen to folks outside of our industry, we're talking like Fortune 500 CEOs when they're being interviewed, and I've heard them talk about, in your vast career, thinking back, what are some of the strategies that have helped you the most in being an effective leader? And the one word that came up was curiosity. So simple, so straightforward. I mean, you'd think it'd be some complex formula, and it was really, and I heard it last weekend. I was out with an alumni group at the Case Western Reserve University at the Weatherhead School of Management, and I'm listening to alumni that are just like fascinating careers, from AOL to PayPal to MyFitnessPal to all these companies. And the message came out again. The best strategy that they've leaned into is just curiosity, not knowing it at all, having a learner's mindset when faced with a difficult situation. And your question initially was, this world of management versus leadership. I felt like I was even getting this wrong years ago, where I was like, well, management keeps things and processes together and is the, what are those when you bowl, it's those bumper lanes. Like, you've got to keep things in control in a process. And leadership is all about, how do you reinvent the future? How do you help people into a bold new future and co-create that and like draw people forward? And I remember in 2022, one of our EMS leadership summits that we hosted, it was Heather Edward from the BC EHS system up in Victoria. And she had learned from Dr. Angelo Caravaggio, a professor in Canada who taught leadership studies for the military, and like had this great career of research in leadership. And they were so careful with the language that they used. That presentation was the language of leadership. And it's not that management is good or bad. It's just you may be an effective or an ineffective manager, or like you're managing the processes so much as the leadership becomes a different language. And so often I think we conflate the two. And then we think just because we may have been ineffective at producing the outcome, that means we're also an ineffective leader. So yeah, certainly what Lisa pointed to, I think is spot on, but it does take a certain level of vulnerability to say, look, I don't have all the answers. I don't want to come in being a know-it-all. Like, tell me what's important to you. What do you see? You're on the front lines. Your perspective should be just as valuable as anyone's because you're seeing it in the day to day. And as you go up in an organization, even in corporations, like the CEOs and the executives start to get distance from the front lines. There are things people are afraid to even say to them. So they're not hearing the truth. They're not hearing people's perspectives unless they go out there. And as Scott Moore says, having an open door policy in an organization does no good unless you go out that door and you go out there and you talk with people and you engage with people and find out where they're at. So yeah, I think that I'm always fascinated by the world of management theory, but also the world of leadership and some of those strategies that we can embrace. Lisa and I were talking about this at one of our trainings, and it was this world operating the world of expectations versus agreements. And everybody thinks, well, of course I should have great expectations of people. But expectations live in the unsaid. Agreements are in the said. Those operating principles were actually agreements because we talked about it and we had a conversation, and that's what we've committed to, rather than I'm just going to keep it in my head that here's my definition of what a good leader is or what I expect of you. And living in the world of expectations, you can only just be satisfied. When you live in the world of agreements, that's where the magic happens, because you know when words come out of your mouth that like I'm going to deliver, or when words come out of that person's mouth, I know they're going to deliver because we have practice over and over again that I know if they say they're going to do what by when, it's going to happen because we have an agreement about it. So yeah.
I would love to tell you guys my personal story if Kevin's okay with it.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, Kevin.
I was a mid-level manager for a med-surg floor of nurses, LNAs, things like that. And I actually stepped down from nursing and from being a nurse manager. The reason I stepped down from being a nurse manager was my own mental health, first of all. My husband's mental health, because it was draining our brand new marriage that we had. And also just the people, I felt like I wasn't serving them because of where I was mentally. There was a lot of anxiety related to being a nurse manager because these quality metrics, which are related to not people on your floor that are not you, you can be the best nurse in the world, but you feel like you're trying to make other people do their job. That and be nice to people. Every person is not a nice person. Every nurse is not a nice nurse. So when you're getting rated as your own job about the people that are on your floor, and we work in a very staffing challenged profession across healthcare.
That's a
EMS.
nice way to put it.
Yeah, staffing challenges. So that does go into it as well. Have you ever talked to a leader like me that stepped down, and what do you kind of say to them when you hear my story? Do you deal with people like me in your curriculum?
I don't know about in my curriculum, but I've go ahead, Rob.
I would say what we've seen time and time again in our industry is people get promoted because they're the best paramedic and they get that gold badge. And guess what? They didn't have any training to develop them. They have one tool in their toolbox. It's usually command and control, probably the worst tool that should be used very sparingly in life or death situations. And what do? They apply it to everything. Lisa said earlier, it's like to a hammer, everything's a nail. So if you don't give those people tools of how to deal with people, how to deal with their emotions, how to deal with that perceived stress and pressure, of course they're going to fail. And unfortunately, they fail by blowing up at other people, by losing it, having an amygdala hijack, and they're in a heightened state of sympathetic response. And they don't know how to get off out of that. So it's no surprise that when organizations don't value leadership training and education and developing other people before you promote them, Like we said earlier, like our goal is to build a bench of leaders, because when you promote somebody with that gold badge, they were a great paramedic, it doesn't mean they're going to be a great supervisor. And the number one reason people will leave an organization, Gallup has studied this, is because of an experience with a boss or a supervisor.
Mm-hmm.
So your story is not unique.
We lack?
Why do you think
we lack? Why do you think we lack leadership training? Why do you think they don't give us more leadership training?
People thinking that it's all about the metrics and they just don't value. So this is one of the conundrums that we talk about a lot, Lisa and I. Be transparent with you. People don't value leadership training. We thought, we're going to put this curriculum together. We're going to study the best of the best. And we went down all these rabbit holes for our whole careers. And we have studied so much in these topics, in these areas of what's worked and what hasn't. And we've packaged it up. And here's this free course. Guess what? People would take it. They would get a little out of it. But it wasn't until we started putting a price on it that they started to value that, oh, there must be something in there. So we changed our free course to a paid course, and we continued to develop the content in it. And people started to pay attention, because people pay attention to what they pay for. So we could come to you saying, hey, we've got the curriculum here. And they'll be like, oh, that's nice. I've got to focus over here on my clinical education. And they're just not valuing it until, frankly, you put a price on it and you start to share people's results. Because don't ask me and Lisa how our training is. Like, go ask the people who have actually taken it and completed it. They will tell you that they have seen their coworkers differently, that they have seen their family members differently. We had one participant that was, we'll call him a salty dog, because he was around for about 40 years and he had been in trainings. And that person came up to us after class, and the second part of the training said that they actually had a conversation with their son that they hadn't talked to in over 20 years, because they were holding on to a story of how they thought it was their fault. And when they took responsibility for the outcome, they saw that they were just as much at play or at fault for how the outcome was. And they had a conversation with their son. Like, I don't care about what you're doing in the EMS world. When you can have a conversation like that, when break through to somebody that's been around the block a few times and that's seen a few courses and comes up to you and tells you that they just had this transformational experience, and that they haven't talked to their son in almost 20 years, and because of what they heard, they're going to go have a conversation, like, that's enough of a testimonial to me. So I hear your story. I've seen people, and I've seen the best of the best paramedics get promoted, and I don't blame them, because they were never given the support they needed. When I asked some of these people that probably I had the worst leadership experience with, that they just treated like an awful situation, their response was, well, that's how my boss treated me. And then in that moment, between that and hearing Lisa say, to every hammer is a nail, it really clicked for me. Like, I had some empathy in the situation. It's like, okay, they got treated like crap their whole career, so they in turn, that's how they were going to treat other people.
Lost her.
Yeah, we lost
Lisa,
Robbie.
can you please tell your bank story? I know, Robbie, you can finish. I'm so sorry. I thought you were gone. But I watched an interview and you talked about a bank manager who doubled his bank in like a year. I think our listeners would get a lot out of that story if you could tell it.
Sure. Can I just say one thing to what you said about your story? And thank you for sharing that. I think that was very generous and kind of you. I think one of the things often we don't have respect for is the learning curve. Like, going from novice to mastery, like when you are an excellent provider and then you get put in a leadership position, it's a whole nother learning curve. And I don't think a lot of people appreciate or respect that. And then, we think we should be better at it and we should have done, and all these things start to happen in our minds, and now you like, no, you're not supposed to be good at it for a while. Right. And if you're doing, if you're not getting the training ahead of time, like Robbie was just talking about, then the learning curve is going to take as long as it takes. And I think that, it's okay to say, okay, this is where I was on the learning curve. It doesn't mean anything about the future. It doesn't mean I couldn't do it in some other situation, but in that situation where I was on the learning curve didn't work for me and didn't work for my family. And that is okay. That is no fault of anyone's other than that's just where you were, right? And if we can respect the learning curve, it gives us more freedom to be curious and try different things. And so anyway, that's what I wanted to say about that. So, I think the bank story you're talking to was about a guy named Tom Amell. He actually spoke at our very first summit in 2019, but he's a pretty good friend of mine. He, took over as CEO of a bank, a local bank. And when he took over, when he was in the hiring process, he said to the board of directors, and this was a fairly, I would call it stodgy, Robbie, I don't know, old-fashioned bank, right?
100-plus-year-old bank organization.
Yeah, like stodgy is not the right word, but it was set in its ways, you know? And when Tom was interviewed, he said, listen, if you hire me for this position, and I really want it, here's what's going to happen. Here's my business model. And he had evidence for it because he had been not a president of a bank, but he had been high level in different banks. And it was basically, employee engagement is the number one thing. We have to take care of our employees. That will create, customers who are zealots, who are like avid fans, and then that will lead to financial success. And he said, I need to have the freedom to do that, or I don't want to be the CEO. And like I said, he had a track record. So he became the CEO. And so that's what he started. Now, mind you, the bank that he had taken over, there had been some mergers. There had been some lack of trust of leadership, we'll just call it. And so he spent the first 6 months, maybe more, what he called a listening tour. He didn't implement any new policies. He every week, I believe it might have been even more often than that, he would have 25 employees in a room and he would just listen. And he had this is my favorite part. He had 3 flip charts in the room. And on the first one would be immediate fixes. The middle one would be may need to take time. And the third one, that's dumb. We're not doing that. And he has such a great sense of humor that he could do that. And he was just human with everybody. You know, the people we lead are not aliens. They're just humans, just like us. And that's his philosophy, is like, we're all humans. We're basically all the same. So anyway, the things that we're able to do immediately, he would do immediately. The things that, okay, we're going to look into that. I like that idea, or we're not sure about that idea, but we're going to take that on. Will you be on the team? That's the other thing. He would ask people if they brought it up. He'd say, will you be on the team that looks into that? And if people said yes, then he would put them on the team. And if they said no, it would kind of go to the low end of the back burner. And then the third one was, it's dumb, we're not doing that. He would actually explain why. And it would be there wasn't a lot of those, but it would be things like, we should have higher CD rates. And he'd be like, no. And he would explain it to people, right? But what happened through this is that he demonstrated that he was a man of his word. That if people asked for it and he could do it, he would do it. If he thought it was worthwhile, they would put a team together, they would investigate it, they would implement it. And he was willing to hear any idea. Was it a year, Robbie? I can't remember now if it was within a year they doubled, or was it 2 years?
It was a very short amount of time.
I think it was a year.
$1 billion a year entity.
It went from $500 million to $1 billion.
Yeah.
No, something like that. But it was crazy good. And he has not wavered from that. And they have really grown. I mean, they are even bigger now. They've brought on other business services and other kinds of services. They went through a really rough time because of a difficult situation, but he was transparent in every way. As things were hitting the news, he would send out emails, and anybody who has a question, we're going to have meetings about this. And one of my other favorite things he does is every time they have a new hires, oh, by the way, for a teller position, they get 40 applications.
They have a line around the block for an entry-level teller position. So don't tell me.
Wow.
And he's even said, he's like, Robbie, Lisa, we've got banking. You guys have something so special that you get to help people on their worst moments and their worst days and make a difference. He's like, you've got that. There's so much more intrinsically that beneficial for people. And here he's dealing with banking, but even he is able to create a line around the block for an entry-level position.
Yeah. Because he believes that it all rests on how well we treat and value our employees. And it's not flavor of the month. It is his culture. And it is ridiculously powerful to walk into the bank. I'm a customer, but I've also gone in to meet with him for meetings. It is a world-class experience to walk into that building. Their bank locations are just world-class. I mean, we're here in upstate New York. I mean, these are, when I tell you, it is like a different, it's like you're breathing different air when you walk in there because everybody is a part of it. You ask somebody, what are you doing? If they're answering the phone, they'll say, I'm part of a world-class organization. Like that's the flavor of that's the culture there. So I just want to say this last thing. So when I tell you he puts his money where his mouth is, I'm not kidding you. Every month, anybody that's newly hired comes to a breakfast with the CEO and they have they call it a champagne breakfast, but it's not real champagne. It's some kind of apple sparkly thing. But they sit down with all the leaders, as many of them as they can on the executive team, including Tom, and they welcome them and they share the vision of the organization. They invite them to learn as much as they can. I mean, they have so many programs there that I could go on and on about. Like within the first week of being hired, people have a career development plan within a week where they want to be.
I think hospitals could take a lot from this in that investing in your employees never comes back null and void. Investing in their mental health and their physical health never comes back null and void. I think that's a key point that we're missing today in healthcare, first responder, things.
Yeah.
So Robbie, Lisa, you guys are leaders in the industry, obviously. And Lisa, you've been a life coach, is that right?
Yes, I've been a business and life coach for a little over 30 years.
So if somebody's listening to this, and Robbie, you've been in EMS for how long?
For over 21 years in the industry. Yeah.
Wow. You beat me by a year. Yeah. It's not a competition, but you beat me by a year. So if somebody's listening to this and they are an aspiring leader, what's your message for success to them in a leadership role? What to kind of wrap this all up in a nice little package, what is what's the message that you send to anybody listening to this that is a new leader or aspiring to be a leader one day or to be a leader from wherever they stand right now?
I think I'll go first and say that if I were to give, and I actually did the math, it's 24 years. I'm like, ooh, don't do the math. If I were to talk to myself as a young leader, I would say, and Gallup, the Gallup organization has proven this over and over again, is that in any organization, you're going to have three bands of people. You're going to have your high performers, probably your top 15%. You're going to have your low performers, probably your top 20 or bottom like 18%, 15%. And in the middle, you're going to have that like 65% of the organization. The majority are going to be in the middle. And those people will be pulled in the direction of where you focus your attention and your efforts. So if you get caught in the trap of focusing on the actively disengaged, low-performing people, Gallup calls them cave dwellers, consistently against virtually everything, that your energy will be zapped. They're like energy vampires. Not saying don't pay attention to them, but just don't think your job as a leader is to focus on fixing other people's problems or that people are a problem to be fixed. People are not a problem to be fixed. It's your job as a leader to, how about spend a little more time focused on the actively, those high performers in your system, those people that just show up, they try to give their best, but they feel slightly ignored. And I remember the story I'll try to be quick about this, a researcher called Shane Lopez, a psychologist, and he defined leadership in a great way. And he talked about followers, students, employees, citizens. He said they all need one thing, and that's hope. And there it is. He says, I summed up the last century's worth of scholarly work on leadership, and it's worth repeating. Followers need hope. And he wrote a fantastic book called Making Hope Happen. And he says you essentially need three things as a leader. Hope is equal to goals, a vision, plus agency, the thought process, the efficacy that, yes, I can do this. And pathways, multiple pathways, not just plan A, B, and C, but plan A through Z. That if one doesn't go well, you have to have, he calls it the willpower and the way power to know that no matter what, you know what that vision is because you've talked about it, you've created it together, and you've got the right attitude, the perseverance, the grit, the tenacity to make it happen, that there's so many different pathways to that future vision. And that is what's going to inspire other people. So just be really careful about where you're spending your time. Dr. Benjamin Hardy says that 80% of what we do is a waste of time. If we were to really be honest with ourselves, that probably 20% of where we spend our time is producing all of our results. And we just need to be looking at ourselves and like, where can we cut back on the areas that aren't creating the results we want and focus more on what is that future vision that will make hope happen, as Shane Lopez says. Yeah.
The only thing I would add is be willing to, I would say, be curious and you're on a learning curve. I mean, I've had my own company for over 22 years, and I've been a coach for 30, and Robbie and I have had the EMS Leadership Academy for, I think officially for 12 or something like that. We're still learning, and there's so many resources to learn. If your organization is not investing in you to learn how to be a leader, invest in yourself. Whether it's we have free resources on our website, we have very low cost items. There's all kinds of, it doesn't even have to be EMS leadership. There's so many ways to learn, and you don't have to know it all. You just have to be willing to learn and be curious about what's actually going on. The minute we go into assuming, we're cooked. Imagine if you go assuming into a critical incident with a patient, right? Look at what you miss. But if you go in, even if you think you know what it is, you get curious, right? You have systems in place to make sure you don't miss something. But we don't do that same thing with other situations that involve humans, or even with ourselves. We start self-diagnosing, and I'm this way because, and blah, 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 blah. And it's a whole lot of weight. But when we just get curious and say, what can I learn here? What can I do differently? What can I learn as a leader? It's just a different experience and a different energy. And, that has you be in it for the long haul.
Robbie, and I know we're closing out, but you said something that sparked a question in me. So you have that large group, kind of in the graph that you played out for us, that are cave dwellers. How do you not fall into the old adage of the squeaky wheel gets the grease? Because those cave dwellers are often the loudest.
So Lisa helped me understand this once when she said, what if we made the meaning of that person, that squeaky wheel, out to be that they're actually committed to the organization? Because if they weren't committed, if they didn't have something to say, if they didn't care enough, they probably actually care more than we think that they care. And so actually maybe reinterpreting that message that they're giving, that maybe I've just mislabeled them, or maybe I frankly, we do it to everyone, put labels on people. It's just easy. Put them in a box, and guess what? They can't show up differently once we put a label on them. So what if we tried to see them differently, that squeaky wheel is probably more committed. Yeah, they might be a little rough around the edges. They're pretty salty, and they've probably had an experience or two that we can learn from, that we could say, okay, I'm going to interpret their complaining as commitment and try to do something about it. I'm going to be the best listener I can be and not have judgments and interpretations and labels. I'm going to try to do my best to take the blinders off myself. And it's not about just ignoring the people. It's about really focusing your attention, your energy on other people as well. And then not being bogged down by that person's complaining. And, sometimes it might just be venting. Like, do you, and the best 5 words I remember is, do you want help with that? It might be 6 words. I don't know, but it's like,
I was just going to say the same thing. If we could hear a complaint like a commitment, and we can actually, again, assume the person's fighting a hard battle just like everyone else, and say, one of my favorite things I tell people is to say something like, wow, that sounds challenging. What are you going to do about that? Or, wow, that sounds challenging. Do you need help with that? Because either of those things, one, you'll get their ideas for how they think it should be, or 2, they're going to say, yeah. Or they might say, no, I just wanted you to know. Now you know, right? It just sort of sorts it out, and you don't have to try to avoid complainers or whatever, because they just want to be known. They just want to be heard and known.
This has
just like all the rest of us.
And so beneficial for me. I appreciate you guys.
For me
coming
too.
on
Phenomenal.
Thank you.
Absolutely fantastic information. We really do appreciate you guys. I always give guests an opportunity toward the end of the show. Tell us where we can find all your stuff. Tell us where we can get the resources. Tell us where we can hook in with what you guys are doing.
You can go to emsleadershipacademy.com for all of our courses and trainings. We have something called our mini course. It may be small, but it's pretty mighty.
It's mighty.
It's a place to start. And we have programs for helping leaders become better coaches. And how do you keep what's called keeping the best? Because really that's what it's about. It's how to be a good leader is to be a good coach. And we have jam-packed that with not only a solid curriculum, but a bonus library that's just as big of resources. And I'll follow up in saying emsleadershipsummit.com. If you go to that website, you can register for the EMS Leadership Summit and get your free pass. It runs for 5 days. So when you sign up, you'll have 5 days opportunity to access over 30 speakers, some of the best and most brilliant minds we could find. And they're sharing their tips and strategies and life stories. And folks can, for a nominal fee, can upgrade to an all access pass. So you can get NEMSMA accredited CMEs for those hours and additional bonuses. We try to make it very a low barrier to entry. So EMSLeadershipAcademy.com, EMSLeadershipSummit.com. And I'd like to conclude by saying, Kevin and Michaela, thank you. Thank you for putting a podcast together and a resource together where people can go, especially with a topic that's so critical and so necessary. This industry is very near and dear to my heart. I've been doing it since I was very young. And just to see that there's more people out there having conversations, real conversations about the psychological health, safety, well-being, the mental health and wellness of the providers it's so important, and want to thank you for having us on.
Yeah, me too. I 15 years ago when we started, nobody was talking about this stuff. So we're so delighted. First of all, an honor just to be guests, but really you guys deserve so much credit for speaking your truth and really drawing the necessary attention to all of it. And we're here to help. So people can email us at support@emsleadership.com. If there's anything we've talked about. Sorry. What he said. EMSLeadershipAcademy.com, to ask us questions. We'll point you in a direction, or if you have questions about anything we talked about, we love that. And we write blogs based on what people ask us questions about. So we love to hear from people.
I'd like to just close the story, and this all came full circle for us when I shared in the beginning how I was so frustrated as a young leader that, where were the educational resources? And, the state puts out that curriculum for EMT or paramedic, and good luck running an organization, right?
Yeah.
Nearly 20 years later, it all came full circle when the state of New York reached out to us and said, we want you to create a leadership curriculum for the entire state. And we did that in 2021. And it was just a huge honor for them to reach out. And it really, for me, closed that whole circle of finally, we get to be the ones that help contribute to the betterment. When agencies are closing, and throughout COVID, lost 10% of EMS organizations and less than 17% of providers through those times. People need this material, and we're glad to be putting it out there.
So everybody listening, go check them out. I have actually listened to, I've gotten a pass the last 2 or 3 years in a row and listened to the summit. I never make it through all 30 speakers. I have a short attention span, but I make it through at least 10 or 15 of them. And I absolutely love everything that y'all are doing. That's the reason I reached out to you guys. And just to remind everybody, this was a vision of mine and Kim's 6 months ago, and we put it together, and it's still got the same vision today, that we want to be a safe place for people to tell their stories and a safe place for providers to land when things aren't great, because sometimes things aren't great, and it's okay to say that. It's also okay to be okay with things that, some are struggling with. Everybody is built differently. Nobody's mental health fits in a box, and that's important. My mental health doesn't fit in a box. Michaela's, Robbie's, Lisa's. It's not a single solitary box that we can put everybody into this one container. So just remember that everybody's struggling with something different. We are definitely here for you. You can reach out to us. You can find us on all the social media platforms. You can email us. Kim or Kevin and Michaela will have a account set up soon too, at asilentwarwithin.com. So just any of our first names at asilentwarwithin.com. That's our website. You can go check that out. Again, all the social media stuff we stream on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, a few others that get uploaded to those directories as well for the lighter use platforms that are out there. We're everywhere that you can find us. We want you to reach out to us. We want to be available to you. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. Michaela, we're so happy to have you on our team. As always, be safe, take care of your mind, and we will talk soon. Goodbye, everybody.
You've been listening to A Silent War Within. If this episode resonated, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, you're not alone and your well-being matters. It's time to end this silent war.